Countdown Till Christmas is brought to you by Princess Grams. Personalized, magical, musical greetings from your favorite characters. Learn more and send one at princessgrams.com. Well, hello there. Today is December 7th. Hi, Sasha. And that means that we have been decorating, singing, and sharing stories together for a week now. And I hope that you've enjoyed it as much as I have. Well, I wonder what our Advent calendar has in store for us today. And I think since Sasha wants to stay with me, I'm just going to reach over, if I can. There we go. I've got it here. Oh, I like this one. This one is from Ireland. It has an Irish blessing on it in this cozy little home. And it says, "May your troubles be less and your blessings be more. Let nothing but happiness come through your door." Oh. Bye, Sasha. Well, why don't you help me find a place to put it on the tree? How about here? Right near our deer. That looks nice. Now, of course, people in Ireland also speak English. But since this is an Irish blessing, I thought maybe we could learn how to say Happy Christmas in Irish Gaelic. So the way that you do that is Nollaig honna chuit. Nollaig honna chuit. And that's, if you want to try it with me, Nollaig, honna, nollaig, honna, chuit. And that one's a little bit tricky. We've got that sound that's kind of back in your throat again. Sort of like that. Mixed with witch. You probably know the word witch. So now imagine you add a little to the front of that. Nollaig honna chuit. 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 So that's Nollaig honna chuit. Very nice. Well, you know, Celtic people have lived in Ireland and Britain for many, many years, since the Iron Age, which is more than 800 years before the first Christmas. But Celtic people, especially in Britain, helped to start one tradition that we do still today at Christmas that I think you might know. Celtic scholars and spiritual leaders called Druids believed that hanging mistletoe would protect them from bad weather and evil spirits because the mistletoe stays green all year, unlike the leaves that fall from some trees in the winter. And since it stays green, it's called an evergreen, just like a Christmas tree. Now, in Victorian times, that's the time when the story about Mr. Scrooge and Tiny Tim took place. Hanging mistletoe turned into the tradition that we know now, where people will kiss underneath the mistletoe. And Britain is also where one of my favorite Christmas traditions started, singing Christmas carols. And the song we're going to learn together today is an Old English carol that talks about some other plants that we associate with Christmas. It's called The Holly and the Ivy. Do you know this one? It's not quite as familiar as some of the others we've been singing together, but I hope you'll enjoy learning it. And if you do already know it, why don't you sing it with me? It goes like this. The holly and the ivy, when they were both full grown, of all the trees that are in the wood, the holly bears the crown. Oh, the rising of the sun, and the running of the deer, the playing of the merry organ, sweet singing in the choir. So why don't we learn the first part together? The words are, the holly and the ivy, when they are both full grown. Now, we learned about holly a couple days ago in Deck the Halls, remember? It looks like this. And this is what ivy looks like. Ivy is a kind of vine, and you've probably seen it before, maybe even as a houseplant. So in these lines, we're talking about two full-grown plants, the holly and the ivy when they are both full-grown. And the next lines are, of all the trees that are in the wood, the holly bears the crown. So I think that this song is saying that out of all the trees in the forest, the holly is the greatest. So once again, our lyrics are, the holly and the ivy, when they are both full grown, of all the trees that are in the wood, the holly bears the crown. So are you ready to try singing that with me? We'll sing it 2 times together, okay? Ready? The holly and the ivy, when they are both full grown, of all the trees that are in the wood, the holly bears the crown. Other time. The holly and the ivy, when they are both full grown, of all the trees that are in the wood, the holly bears the crown. That was very nice, and thank you again for singing with me. We'll work on the second part tomorrow. But now, it's time for our story of the day. And today's story is called Jimmy Scarecrow's Christmas, and it was written by Mary E. Wilkins Freeman. Jimmy Scarecrow led a sad life in the winter. Jimmy's greatest grief was his lack of occupation. He liked to be useful, and in winter, he was absolutely of no use at all. He wondered how many such miserable winters he would have to endure. He was a young scarecrow, and this was his first one. He was strongly made, and although his wooden joints creaked a little when the wind blew, he did not grow in the least rickety. Every morning, when the wintry sun peered like a hard yellow eye across the dry corn stubble, Jimmy felt sad. But at Christmas time, his heart nearly broke. On Christmas Eve, Santa Claus came in his sleigh, heaped high with presents, urging his team of reindeer across the field. He was on his way to the farmhouse where Betsy lived with her Aunt Hannah. Betsy was a very good little girl, and she had a great many presents. Santa Claus had a large wax doll baby for her on his arm, tucked up against the fur collar of his coat. He was afraid to trust it in the pack, lest it get broken. When Jimmy Scarecrow saw Santa Claus, his poor heart gave a great leap. "Santa Claus, here I am!" he cried out. But Santa Claus did not hear him. "Santa Claus, please give me a little present. I was good all summer and kept the crows out of the corn," pleaded the poor Scarecrow in his choking voice. But Santa Claus passed by with a merry halloo and a great clamor of bells. Then Jimmy Scarecrow stood in the corn stubble and shook with sobs until his joints creaked. "I am of no use in the world, and everybody has forgotten me," he moaned. But he was mistaken. The next morning, Betsy sat at the window holding her Christmas baby doll, and she looked out at Jimmy Scarecrow standing alone in the field amidst the corn stubble. "Aunt Hannah," said she. Aunt Hannah was making a crazy patchwork quilt, and she frowned hard at a triangular piece of red silk and a circular piece of pink, wondering how to fit them together. "Well," said she, "did Santa Claus bring the Scarecrow any Christmas presents?" "No, of course he didn't." "Why not?" "Because he's a scarecrow. Don't ask silly questions." "I wouldn't like to be treated so if I were a scarecrow," said Betsy. But her Aunt Hannah did not hear her. She was busy cutting a triangular snip out of the round piece of pink silk, so the piece of red silk could be feather-stitched into it. It was snowing hard out of doors, and the north wind blew. The Scarecrow's poor old coat got whiter and whiter with snow. Sometimes he almost vanished in the thick white storm. Aunt Hannah worked until the middle of the afternoon on her crazy quilt. Then she got up and spread it out over the sofa with an air of pride. "There," said she, "that's done, and that makes the 8th. I've got one for every bed in the house, and I've given 4 away. I'd give this away if I knew of anybody who wanted it. Aunt Hannah put on her hood and shawl and drew some blue yarn stockings over her shoes and set out through the snow to carry a slice of plum pudding to her sister Susan, who lived down the road. Half an hour after Hannah had gone, Betsy put on her little red plaid shawl over her head and ran across the field to Jimmy Scarecrow. She carried her new baby doll snuggled up under her shawl. "Wish you Merry Christmas," she said to Jimmy Scarecrow. "Wish you the same," said Jimmy, but his voice was choked with sobs and was also muffled, for his old hat had slipped down to his chin. Betsy looked pitifully at the old hat fringed with icicles, like frozen tears, and the snow-laden coat. "I've brought you a Christmas present," said she, and with that she tucked her baby doll inside Jimmy Scarecrow's coat, sticking its tiny feet inside a pocket. "Thank you," said Jimmy Scarecrow faintly. "You're welcome," said she. "Keep her under your overcoat so the snow won't wet her, and she won't catch cold. She's delicate." "Yes, I will," said Jimmy Scarecrow, and he tried hard to bring one of his stiff, outstretched arms around to clasp the baby doll. "Don't you feel cold in that old summer coat?" asked Betsy. "If I had a little exercise, I should be warm," he replied. But he shivered, and the wind whistled through his rags. "You wait a minute," said Betsy, and was off across the field. Jimmy Scarecrow stood in the corn stubble with the doll baby under his coat and waited. And soon Betsy was back again with Aunt Hannah's crazy quilt trailing in the snow behind her. "Here," said she, "here is something to keep you warm." And she folded the crazy quilt around the Scarecrow and pinned it. "Aunt Hannah wants to give it away if anybody wants it," she explained. "She's got so many crazy quilts in the house now, she doesn't know what to do with them. Goodbye. Be sure you keep the doll baby covered up." And with that, she ran across the field and left Jimmy Scarecrow alone with the crazy quilt and the doll baby. The bright flash of colors under Jimmy's hat brim dazzled his eyes, and he felt a little alarmed. "I hope this quilt is harmless if it is crazy," he said. But the quilt was warm, and he dismissed his fears. Soon the doll baby whimpered, but he creaked his joints a little, and that amused it, and he heard it cooing inside his coat. Jimmy Scarecrow had never felt so happy in his life as he did for an hour or so. But after that, the snow began to turn to rain, and the crazy quilt was soaked through and through. And not only that, but his coat and the poor baby doll. It cried pitifully for a while, and then it was still, and he was afraid it was dead. It grew very dark, and the rain fell in sheets. The snow melted, and Jimmy Scarecrow stood halfway up his old boots in water. He was saying to himself that the saddest hour of his life had come, when suddenly he again heard Santa Claus's sleigh bells and his merry voice talking to his reindeer. It was after midnight, Christmas was over, and Santa was hastening home to the North Pole. "Santa Claus! Dear Santa Claus!" cried Jimmy Scarecrow with a great sob, and that time Santa Claus heard him and drew rein. "Who's there?" he shouted out of the darkness. "It's only me," replied the Scarecrow. "Who's me?" shouted Santa Claus. "Jimmy Scarecrow." Santa got out of his sleigh and waded up. "Have you been standing here ever since the corn was ripe?" he asked pityingly. And Jimmy replied that he had. "What's that over your shoulders?" Santa Claus continued, holding up his lantern. "It's a crazy quilt." "And what are you holding under your coat?" "The baby doll that Betsy gave me, and I'm afraid it's dead," poor Jimmy Scarecrow sobbed. "Nonsense!" cried Santa Claus. "Let me see it." And with that, he pulled the baby doll out from under the Scarecrow's coat and patted its back and shook it a little, and it began to cry and then to coo. "It's all right," said Santa Claus. "This is the doll baby I gave Betsy, and it is not at all delicate. It went through the measles, and the chicken pox, and the mumps, and the whooping cough before it left the North Pole. Now, get into the sleigh, Jimmy Scarecrow, and bring the doll baby and the crazy quilt." "I've never had any quilts that weren't in their right minds at the North Pole, but maybe I can cure this one. Get in." Santa chirruped to his reindeer, and they drew the sleigh up close in a beautiful curve. "Get in, Jimmy Scarecrow, and come with me to the North Pole," he cried. And I'm afraid we're going to have to find out tomorrow what happens to Jimmy Scarecrow. If he goes with Santa to the North Pole, we'll find out tomorrow. Well, why don't we end our time together today with another song? And this one is an old English carol. It's also called Greensleeves, but here with these lyrics it's called What Child Is This? And if you know it, why don't you sing it with me? What child is this who laid to rest on Mary's lap is sleeping, whom angels greet with anthems sweet, while shepherds watch are keeping? This is Christ the King, whom shepherds guard and angels sing. Haste, haste to bring him laud, the babe, the Son of Mary. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'll see you again tomorrow. Bye-bye. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and share it with a friend. That not only encourages me, it also makes a big difference to my channel and helps others find videos they would enjoy too. Wishing you a joyful season and a happy day. I'll see you tomorrow.